Oh, yeah. I remember being
Yeah.
by the end of October.
I just want to say something about today's date. One sentence.
Wanting to get a new replacement for one of the big ones.
Oh, yes.
Everything is sunny now. You know, you may have some.
How will this be determined? For the majority.
Yeah, and unfortunately,
Charles, can you check, can you say something and to check that we can hear you?
Testing 1, 2, 3.
No,
Thank you.
we should be muted. Are you muted?
I'm going to mute my audio.
Please mute it.
They must be there. Not necessarily. That could be a screen.
Virginia.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I want you to sign in. Not you, but.
Yes.
Email, but she never sent me. I'm not following you. This is.
I would like to have-
Where you should. Yes. So this is first stuff. And she put it in the included one. She made it in. So you invited speakers.
We're on the council, we have to discuss it.
I wonder. Yeah. Basically, you get them to. Bring up the points. Come up with. And you try to go about it.
It certainly is for you. My friend.
This is.
How are you?
No, I'm not anywhere.
And how that's your
Discussion area. Who's gonna
I'm gonna record it.
Oh.
Eventually. But she's got to say hello to the boys.
Well, and realization to Stuart here. Pretty much enough knows what. The whole exercise was saying prior.
Okay, you already got the cat. Hey, Carl.
That shit is sensitive.
Yes.
Discussion.
Yeah, but you know you've got your coffee. Yeah. So I was gonna get one of them, I've already got it. I know.
And not even very good, but now that word is used and then. And then.
Sitting in front of
Everybody's.
Remember your name.
But I know it's a good contact.
You know, there's another Rodman I know.
Have you met a woman who purports to be Sarah Curl?
Yes.
And never call her anything but Curl.
She doesn't remind me about. I'll have to work on it.
If you haven't signed in, please do so on the podium up there, so we can keep track of who's here and who isn't. Thank you.
The Rockefeller.
Sent that. Isn't that great?
Oh, there they are, there.
Yes.
I don't know which bridge that
How the committee will be constituted. You know, given the amount of work, it's apparently.
That's very strange the way their body parts materializing or dematerializing. Ooh. The top left one, it had two people sitting there, and then various of their body parts were flying around, and then they, it's like birds, they flew away.
Another, yet another committee.
I.
Well, you signed up there a long time ago.
World out there.
I've seen it. They were like.
Good morning. It is November 7th. Welcome to the Residents Council of November 7th. It is now 10 a.m. and the meeting order.
Oh, I know what happens. These are two programs to the same channel, so when I turn this on, it turns you off.
Well, turn yours off.
Yes.
Well, then I'll, well, for now.
Yep.
Okay, just opening remarks. Michelle will be here at 10:30. We've got some interesting subjects to go over this morning, so appreciate your compliance with my request that when we go into council session, the council members be allowed to discuss the matter. We will have an ear session afterwards, so you can voice your opinions and thoughts. So to begin with, just to remind you that next Monday, 1:30 in the PAC, not in the great room, but in the PAC will be our annual Veterans Day ceremony. We had to move because of outbreak of COVID in the health center and the requirement to wear masks, and that doesn't work very well for people that are trying to talk So anyway, that will happen. I now turn it over. I'll shut mine off. You turn yours on.
Just fast.
Just for everybody's information, today is November 7. November 7 is the birthday of Marie Curie and has been declared about 10 years ago as the International Day of Medical Physics.
Oh.
And I have been in that profession for almost 50 years now, so.
Right now, this is gonna be interesting. I'll shut off and open for ears.
Let me reprogram, so it will take 2 seconds. I'll just
All right.
reprogram.
Can we work the one mic while you're doing that?
Yeah, you can work with that one.
All right, so ears, please raise your hand. Please introduce yourself so we can, the people in the audience, our virtual audience, and people here can record your comment.
Time for the holiday party, is it working?
No.
Well, just give me 1 second. I cannot do it without
Yep.
interrupting this.
Just tell us the date, we can hear you.
Yeah, but it can't be recorded. Can they do it?
No.
Be recorded.
Yeah, it's good, it's being recorded and will be released.
Can you check your mic?
Hello, is it working?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
The staff holiday party this year will be Thursday, December 19. I will be contacting you people for serving. This is something the council has done for several years. The last 2 years, I've arranged for the volunteers. Last year, we had 30 people filling 50 time slots. And I will be doing that again this year. I will contact you and then find out when you want to work and eventually sending you an email telling you when you are working and reminding you. It's a big job and I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Thank you.
I nominate Betsy to do it again.
Thank you, Betsy.
I was wondering if there was any report from the interfaith committee on the issue of the crash placement.
Yes. Any other,
I have one. We recently had
your dates?
I'm Dave Smith, I work here. Set up tables and things. So we just recently had the 4th quarter Residents Association meeting. And my comment about Residents Association meetings as run by Tom is that I think, Tom, you've done a great job in the 2 years you've been running them. I did that for 1 year. I found it to be stressful and I don't know if the audience got nearly as much out of it before you took over, not demeaning any other person who had that role. I'm just saying the way you run it with the audio, with the video and the audio combined and the humor, I like it. Thank you very much for 2 years of that.
Yes, 3 minutes, please.
It's about that meeting last week. Many people were flustered that when Christie gave her information packed presentation that they could not see. And she said that in the past, when people were handed out handouts with the information, then they stopped listening and everyone was busy reading. And so either way, it's quite a problem because it's hard stuff for most of us to process. And I suggest to her something that all the people that I spoke with agreed that she should hand out the handouts and just wait for a few minutes for people to get the lay of the land and then proceed to say what she has to say. And questions should wait until the end because questions during the presentation are disruptive and disorganizing.
That was a lesson learned and there will be a new way of presenting this information. When I get to the financial review, I'll kind of hint to that. Yes, Yakov?
Having faced the problem with having too much information on slides on presentations, there are very easy techniques to use when preparing a PowerPoint. One of them is to not have a slide full of numbers and letters and so on, but just to highlight what you want to highlight on the slide, instead of saying, look at this point here. So I would be happy to, help anybody that needs to prepare a presentation to help them do that. It's not so complicated.
And that has been suggested and offered to management that we can help. Okay, any other ears, comments? Okay. At this time, I'm going into council session. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the October 17th council meeting.
So move.
I
Irving?
have an objection.
Oh,
Well, let's get a motion first.
Oh, okay.
A second emotion.
okay, Irving and Alice. Open for discussion?
In the item about the library, I would like to change wedding to weeding.
Are you okay with that? I'm looking at the secretary. Okay, thank you. A correction will be noted. All right, any other inputs on it? All in favor, please say aye. 8-0. Also, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the 2024 annual association meeting on October 30th. Dave, second June. Any discussion? Or waiting or wedding or?
They were not wedding there.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Okay, communications received or sent by the corresponding secretary.
I did send out requests to committee chairs for a report for the to attach to the association annual report. Have not gotten them all back yet. I will be sending emails again.
These are due by the 15th, which is a week Friday. Okay, I'm delinquent in getting that into management or actually to the board. So please push on, and if you are in charge, just a quick one-page summary. The instructions went out, so you know what's going on. Okay, so that's all, Evelyn? That's all you have?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, old business, interfaith committee, discussion, and at the meeting, Ronnie Sue presented a concern and asked that the viewing of the creche in the common spaces be reviewed. So as part of the council, we decided to send it back to the committee that makes that decision, and that was done. They did have a meeting. It was largely attended, and the results were as follows. The Interfaith Committee shows respect and tolerance for all religions, a matter of choice for all. During the holiday season, decorative representation may be displayed during the period of Thanksgiving to January 6th. That includes all religions and aspects. So your request to remove the creche was, I would say, it was denied. They're going to show it with all other religions. It will be done in the lobby and in the reception of the health center. And it will be for that period. Okay? Yes,
In the lobby, so not by the dining room. Is that
that's correct.
Good, good.
Okay, so no, that matter, thank you for bringing it up. And I thank the Interfaith Committee for indulging in and going through it, and it was a very extensive, very in-depth discussion. So this is what the policy now reads. Yes. Give that to you. Okay, invited speakers, committee. Michelle will be here at 10:30 to review, questions that we may bring up at this point. The council and the elected council members have been given a copy of a, let's say, guideline for the committee. It is very extensive. It was done because we need to be sure not only that we understand it now, that going forward, we don't have to revisit the reasons why things are done the way they are here in Woodland Pond. So it contains a very extensive section on what is legal, what is required, and also not rehash, but a repeat of the handbook. And so so really at this point, once we elected to do a committee, management has been doing it by themselves, but right now wants very much to have residents involved in it. So I'm going to, at this point, Yakov, you want to start any discussion?
We're just making comments now, we're not debating, right? We're just hearing what you.
Yes, I'm gonna go through, I had asked that everybody turn in their comments to me, so it would be easy for a secretary to keep track of it. I only got 3.
I have it written down and
Okay.
I'm going to provide it,
There you go.
but I just want to read what I wrote from the record. I looked at the guidelines and I oppose several critical details in the current version of the Invited Speakers Committee guideline. This is the version that you distributed this week. And therefore I'm against it as it stands. The reasons is that first, I have a couple of points, 3, 4 points, I believe. So first one, while the source or initiative to invite speakers is welcome and comprehensive, the first paragraphs in that guideline states that the ISC Invited Speaker Committee will act to, and I put it on quote, provide oversight on the selection of speakers. Now, several synonyms of oversight and supervision are surveillance, management, government, control, and custody. All these are neither consistent with the spirit of all the activities that I have seen in the 5 years of my residence at Woodland Pond, nor are they consistent with the last statement in that guidance that the Invited Speakers Committee decisions will be, under quotes, noted for reference only and sent to the Residents' Council to be recorded. Moreover, the council is not required, I'm quoting from that guidance, the council is not required to motion and accept the notice. Now, this sounds like the ISC will just give the appearance of doing their assigned tasks. Now, instead, I propose that the ISC role to be review of proposed speakers' topics and evaluate whether there is a conflict between the proposed activity and the limitations imposed by the IRS's 501c3 tax exempt regulations. If there is, the inviting party must be asked to limit the scope of the presentation accordingly. Item number 2, I strongly propose that except for the corporate compliance officer, who should be a member of the ISC as proposed, the other members should be nominated by the committees and interest groups that regularly invite speakers. At these times, these should be current events. These are just in an alphabetic order. Current events, land conservation, mental health and wellness, political affairs, shalom space, and sustainability. That makes about 6, so with the compliance officer will be 7, which is a good odd number. Once the committee is formed, their members and not the council should elect a chair and ask for the council's approval as all other committees do it. The terms of chairs are not dictated for other committees, and this should not be different for the ISC. In the current, item number 3, in the current version, the procedures states that the ISC will provide the council and management with his recommendation of approved or denial or of requested invited speakers after reviewing the request form from the sponsor, either individual groups or committees, and a complete syllabus of the speaker's talk, including video, audio, printed handbooks, handouts, etc., and a copy of the completed Woodland Pond invited speaker form. This will include resident speakers as well as those invited from outside the community. All speakers must be endorsed by the associated Woodland Pond Committee or interest group if one exists, prior to being approved by the ISC. Then the ISC will, okay. Now, there is no, this is a quote from that procedure. This is my comment. There is no obvious reason for the council or management to have to review, approve, or deny an invitation unless the ISC asks the council or management for such action. Management compliance officer participation in the review of the ISC should suffice to do that. Number 4, and this is the last one, as part of the list of the underlying basis for the ISC review, it is inappropriate to include, and I quote one of those items, ensuring that the event proposed will provide a meaningful experience for the majority of residents. In fact, most activities at Woodland Pond provide some experience, whether meaningful or not, to just a limited number of residents, and certainly not a majority. I mean, playing chess or doing whatever. So, I think this is the end of my comments, and I would like this to be considered in the proposal and basically to review the whole spirit of that proposal.
Okay. Excuse me, we're having a meeting here. Please don't be rude. We're trying to get this done in time so when Michelle gets here, okay? All right. Mel, but you had sent me a note. Do you have any comments? Microphone, please.
I believe after reading the invited speaker committee's document, I was kind of not clear on what constitutes the level of information you're going to get from a speaker that makes it necessary to go through a committee. It's not clear. I raise that, for instance, on occasion, I give talks here. Basically, I call Gretchen, tell her what I would like to do. She gives me a date. I send her publicity. Publicity goes out. We make arrangements in a specific place like this classroom, and I show up. People who are interested show up. I talk, and we're finished. So I was curious as whether if that was going to impact me, whether I would have to change that procedure and go through the ISC in order to arrange a talk. That's what my general thrust of in my memo to you. It's not clear to me what constitutes necessity. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know what constitutes necessity to approve a speaker or not. That was my general comment.
Okay, we'll try and address that. June? Oh.
I have nothing specific to add.
Nothing specific.
In my personal opinion, except for maybe losing our not-for-profit status with political campaigning, to me, this is Big Brother, and I'm against it, as written. I have comments from Ina that she requested me to read. Dear Tom, fellow council members, incoming council members, and residents. I truly wish I could join you today and resume my duties as recording secretary, but a very necessary medical appointment takes priority. This email has allowed my voice to be heard in one way or another. I truly am against the formation of this committee, especially if final say is at the discretion of management. Woodland Pond residents comprise people from all walks of life, religions, economic backgrounds, schooling, etc. My feelings might lean one way, yet during the discussion or presentation, points can be made to sway my thinking, and as a result, a dialogue may be formed. Yes, it could go the other way and get loud, but aren't we adults, free thinkers, and should be left to form our own opinions? If management happens to be for or against the topic and they object the speaker, isn't management silencing us, adult residents, from forming our own hypotheses? As long as the speaker is not causing ideas that can lead to harm or property damage of any sort, any speaker should be allowed to be welcome to Woodland Pond. If management or residents don't like the topic, they're free to participate in another activity that day. I never understood the argument my father offered when he said, "I'm your father, that's why." So I'm sorry, I always stated my case with him, and today I state my case with you, the Residents' Council. This sets a bad decision for future Woodland Pond events. Thank you for listening.
Is that yours?
No, this is Ina's. I am,
I missed.
right.
As you might guess, it was a particularly long and legalese written document. And I frankly found it difficult because it was confusing to my uneducated legal mind. But even in the first paragraphs where it talked about the makeup of the committee, it said the chair and vice chair will be selected from the members of the Residents' Council. And I found that interesting because the Residents' Council changes every 2 years or so. And it says since the members of the council have a 2-year term, I found it confusing that they said that the chair and vice chair would have a 3-year term. I found that very confusing. And all told, I counted up about 9 members for this committee. And it seems unwieldy to me. It seems it would be difficult for all these folks to get together to easily arrive at a decision regarding can X interest group have a speaker. That's, and then I tried to wade through the rest of it and I thought, this is beyond me. I just can't make sense of all this. I apologize.
Yakov's items number 3 and 4, I think need to be more involved and we would need to read more into that. And in other words, have the copy in front of us and read it. Because it also, where I picked up, and so with Alice also, that the chair and vice chair, my immediate reaction was, are they coming from the council? But after I read into it more and thought about it, no, they're not. They're going to be elected from the outside, but that needs to be clearly stated that they're coming from the outside. And that the council isn't part of this, except it's going to be there and they're going to be approved and so on. Then the clarification, I think it's more or less, if you're a resident here, you have the right to be on this committee if you wish, whether you're new, old, or whatever. And I thought that was rather interesting and good. The other thing that I caught was compensation, which was in B5 of the apartment amendment. I think that needs to be really looked at. And my first question was, it says which board of directors are gonna look at what the compensation is and approve it? Our board of directors or this New York State executive law group? That wasn't clear to me as far as who's gonna approve the compensation, if there's gonna be compensation. And part of Joe Sanders' report, the last part of it was dealing with compensation, and she makes a very good point. She shouldn't be the one that's having to compensate and take it to lunch and so on and so forth. You know, that's part of the committee and they might serve that purpose and be of value in that report. But as far as, like Albert just said, most of the stuff we talk about isn't gonna be really that gravity. And I don't think anybody in their right mind is gonna invite the new president to come and speak to us, so we should be okay.
We can't afford it.
I misunderstood the assignment. I thought it was to come with notes to speak from, not to hand in, so I have some notes. Most of my points were covered by Yakov. And I think on one point, he didn't quite go far enough in that you said you thought maybe 5 or 6 groups now bring in speakers. I counted 12. I counted land conservation, sustainability, interfaith, mental health and wellness, brain health, current events, LGBTQIA and allies, men's coffee, women's tea, philosophy circle, shalom space, and the benefit fund, which is like double the number you had. So to suggest that the committee should be made up of only people who are, or people who, committees who are bringing in speakers would broaden that. And I agree with someone else who said, that's too big of a number. Half of that is probably a better number. Would you like me to stop or? Okay. It wasn't clear to me in reading this document whether this committee would advise or decide. That verbiage goes back and forth, even on the same paragraph. And under procedure, it says decision and it says recommendation. So I'm not sure who has the final decision. It seems to me this document wants the committee to have it, but gives it an advisory role as well. The term limits thing, I'm not so sure I disagree with that. And I see that it could be a prelude to using that to offer that as a council recommendation for other committees as well. It's been talked about in the past. It's not really part of this discussion, but it has been talked about in the past. It is part of what we can do next year, maybe, or not. This is a question, not a comment. Tom, you had said that this had been reviewed by management and the board, and I'm wondering what kind of comments or feedback management and the board had on this document. That's a question. And that's why I have. Stop with.
Let's continue. I've asked the new council members for next year to weigh in with their feelings, because they will be responsible as this goes forward to do it. So your comments, please.
Thank you, Larry Randall. I first of all, thank you for offering us the opportunity to comment on this. We're not officially aboard yet. I have to echo Dave's remark that I didn't understand that we were supposed to submit these to you. I just reread your email and I didn't get that sense out of it, but whatever. So I have some comments. I'm gonna echo much of what Yakov started to say. I'm gonna go, I have a few comments that are kind of picky or whatever. I'm gonna skip over those for the time being. I'm gonna cut to the very last sentence of the not the addenda, but all of the first two pages. That is a quote, the invited speakers committee decisions will be noted for reference only and sent to the residence council to be recorded. The council is not required to motion and accept the notice. My comment, this statement seems to deliver the coup de grace to this whole document. What is the point of this exercise if it only ends up being recorded but otherwise ignored by the residence council and thus presumably by management? And I end by characterizing it as typical bureaucratic folderol.
Well done, well said.
Now, going back to the discussion of having to speaker to provide a complete syllabus of the speaker's talk, including video, audio, printed handouts, etc. I don't even fully understand that, but if we try to take it on its face, I say, this requirement is excessive and burdensome for both the committee and the speaker. Since 2021, the Land Conservation Committee has sponsored 20 well-received and completely non-controversial presentations without incident. All our speakers were representatives of various local not-for-profits and or discussing a personal labor of love. If this requirement stands, I think it only just that speakers be given an honorarium to compensate for their time and trouble to comply. Further, as chair of the Land Conservation Committee, I will recommend that the committee discontinue its speaker series. If the committee disregards my recommendation, I will feel duty bound to resign.
I'm Kathy Kelly, member of the Residence Council elect. So I approached this in a different manner. So, and I also didn't get the same thing for the email, so I have my written list. But I have a lot of questions. I agree with the people who have spoken here before, and I agree there is some confusion about the 3-year term. And I think that's a matter of figuring out how that's gonna proceed. I did mine by page numbers, so still on page 1, for those of us who have the document. My question was, is this for speakers only? What do we do if people come in as performers and show us a magic show would be one example? What do we do with our singers and the people who come and play instruments? They are not likely to have a syllabus or a description about what exactly they're gonna play. And that depends, that's crowd feedback in many cases. So I'm not sure that we're really capturing all the outside people who may come here. For our current residents and those to follow, I agree, those limitations are enormous to do a formal syllabus if that was intended. And uploading videos and audios. My concerns also came up about for Woodland Pond residents, you know, how do we manage discussion groups like the Interfaith Committee and current events? How do we do that? Those meetings also may have a structure of a format, but again, I don't see where people are gonna come up with the syllabus and the other requirements. Still on page 2, ensuring that the proposed event will provide a meaningful experience for the majority. I have 2 questions. What is the description of a meaningful experience that's used in this document? As I think an experience, someone spoke earlier too about, if you don't like the experience of the topic, you don't have to go. And what about our minority population? If we only do programming or have invited speakers about who we assume are the majority of Woodland Pond residents,
I don't know how people identify, I don't know any of those things that we would consider minority. This, and again, I ask questions. The last two sentences on that page, for me, need clarification. And I will agree with you, there's part of these documents that I had trouble getting through because of the legalese also. So I just wrote, I need some more clarification. And then the addendums, I was very happy to see that the addendum was written by the attorney and that they had obviously done a lot of work. So that was really helpful. There are some things that I'm still confused about. And I guess on the addendum, it says the candidate will. And I think some of our concerns about political interactions in whatever manner. I think if political were to stay, excuse me, as the primary type of speaker or presenter or fundraiser, you know, it's a lot of this could be the political, if you can define that, speakers, and not the same for the residents. We know them, management may know them or the other team. So I had some legalese questions too. What about people who do come here to provide an education program and then that person's available to residents in a future capacity in which funds are collected? And the most recent one I can think of was Dr. K, who came, and that too is a concern. I had some other areas for clarification, I'm not gonna go into them right now. And I didn't see any conflicts with the Woodland Pond Code of Conduct. Because that's kind of how we live. I think this is a different scenario. I'm Molly Jones, I'm a member elect. This is a very important and gnarly question. I am very impressed at the amount of work that has gone into preparing the draft. I'm also very impressed with what I've heard, the comments, and I have no comment at this time myself.
Carl Rodman, member-elect. I just want to express my admiration for everybody who's spoken and said things which I admire and accept. I was present at the meeting with Michelle, which started all this. We wanted to have a committee formed and we got deeper and deeper into it. And I think what it all adds up to is everything that this statement wants to accept can probably be found in the document of our policies and what's it called? The handbook. So I think this has made us think very deeply into a lot of issues. And I think probably we can drop the whole thing by realizing that we've been getting along very well up to this point. Nothing drastic has happened to make us take up this issue. And we're doing very well without it.
And thank you all for your comments. David, would you do this, Michelle?
Yeah.
Okay, Michelle, we've been going through each of the council members' feedback on the document, the draft of the guidelines. And I wanted to include the new members as well. Each one has prepared statements that they will give in to the corresponding secretary. We'll compile them and then turn them back so that you can see it. But basically, there's the concern of it being too Big Brother. And you heard some comments about some of the other committees or groups or even individuals that want to bring people in to discuss knitting. Is that part of it? So from the standpoint, and the question was asked about the management's review and the board's review. What feedback came from that you might be able to share with us?
So no one on the board had any comments one way or the other. There were no questions asked, there were no concerns raised, and we have a number of board members that, you know, either operate in this realm or are adjacent to this issue. In particular, several people that either are or have been faculty at or staff at the college at SUNY New Paltz, which I thought was extremely important. I expected questions about it from those people in particular, because obviously this is a big issue on the college campus, and nothing came forth. And they were given ample opportunity to, you know, raise questions or concerns. From an executive team perspective, the goal is to have oversight on this issue and put it in the hands of the residents. And I think I do take exception to the Big Brother comment because we are intentionally keeping management out of it with the exception of the corporate compliance officer. So, you know, as written, it's in the hands of the residents. I also take exception, Carl, with all due respect, to the fact that things have been working well without this policy because they had been until about a year ago. And within the last year that more and more issues have come up that we have raised our hackles a little bit. So to the point of the syllabus and all that, 100%, I think that's excessive. That's easily adjudicated and that can go away. Similarly, there's something else, I will look at the comments, but there was a couple of things I walked in on that I thought absolutely that's an easy fix. Because we don't want to make it onerous for the speakers. It's something that needs to just be easy and routine and, you know, something easily adjudicated. In terms of, I think, Larry, your question about where are the teeth in this thing? I don't have the document in front of me, but as I understand it, this body would have the full authority to yay or nay something based on guidelines that are in the addendum. So it wouldn't necessarily, it's not making a reference to the residents' council, this body would have the authority, is the way I read it, and maybe I'm misunderstanding that. So if there's a disconnect between saying whether it's advisory or a determination, my hope would be that it doesn't need to go anywhere else, that it would just sit with this committee and everyone would be on the same page that they say yes or no, and it doesn't need to go somewhere else. Like we're not trying to create additional bureaucracy here, like that needs to go to the residents' council and so forth. But you know, so I think that's my impression for what it's worth. The concern that I have is that speakers here need to be approved by somebody. It just can't be anybody coming in and have a presentation, whether it be about knitting or whether it be about Iran and Iraq. So if it doesn't sit with this committee, it's ultimately going to sit with me and my team. And that to me seems much more Big Brother than having a resident committee adjudicating the rules that have been set forth by legal counsel.
So this is the challenge. Yakov, you have.
I addressed several of the things that you said in my comments, and you can have a copy of that.
I'll share everything.
Yeah, okay. But that's exactly one of the reasons that I think this is not the way it's written in that proposal, but the way it's written, that proposal basically makes this committee really a paper pusher, that's all. Because it says they will make a note that the council may or may not take into consideration at all, okay? So, and I think that the job of this committee
So I agree with, I think that that reference to majority of the residents or whatever should definitely come out. I agree with that 100%, because I think that every topic should be available for discussion. And I agree with you that, you know, we have had civil discourse, and I think that's what we want to encourage. But if you read the comments from legal counsel, our legal counsel is not just recommending things related to the 501c3. And I don't know if this comment is in there. If not, I have it in my email and we'll share it with the council. She talks about things that are upsetting, emotional, and whatever. And so I will be hard pressed to support something that is in conflict with something that came from our legal counsel. It's an opinion. Of counsel, and that's who we hire to guide us. Doesn't matter.
Joe, you're out of order, please.
It doesn't matter. You know, we have, and I wanna make this very clear. So at the end of the day, we have to look for guidance from somewhere. And if we have legal counsel that we trust, that is here to help us adjudicate some of these issues, I'm not going to do something that's in conflict and cannot support something that's in conflict with something that our legal counsel has recommended unless I think it's unethical or illegal, which certainly they would never do, and nor would our board. So I don't really have a personal preference as to where this goes, and I want to be clear about that. But I do want everyone to be very clear on the fact that this is coming out of a reaction of Woodland Pond is being too heavy-handed in certain things. So this is taking the decision out of my hands and out of the executive team's hands and putting it in the hands of the residents. And I feel like that's a better place for us to be than having the exec team making the ultimate decision.
Okay. Yes, Carl?
So that I can understand more what this is about.
Just take the mic.
So I can understand what this is about. Michelle, I would appreciate it if I could put you back on the spot and ask you, you said everything was going along fine for 14 years, but in this year, there have been things came about that necessitated our taking us this step. Could you give us some idea of what those things were?
So there's been a couple of speakers that are either kind of slipped through the cracks or that have come across my desk for approval that are objectionable. And they're objectionable from the basis of our legal counsel. So something has sort of changed in the air. I don't know exactly what it is. But clearly we've never had this issue. And as, I mean, I came in on the tail end of it, but there's a lot of consideration and a lot of things to be thinking about here. And one of the things that I think is really important for every resident to understand, because this has been a misconception, clearly, and that has come up while this has all come up, is that Woodland Pond is a private organization. And certain things that are afforded in the Constitution underneath, you know, freedom of speech and so forth, don't apply here. And that's, we want to be true to that, but the legality of it is that at the end of the day, we can make this place whatever we want it to be. And that's clear from the legal counsel, and that's why I think it was important that the legal counsel concerns are in here. I like the idea of the residents being in charge of who comes to speak here. As long as it complies and conforms with our code of conduct and legal counsel guidance. And again, intentionally keeps me out of it, keeps everyone on my exec team out of it, except for corporate compliance. And what I have said to everyone that has come into my office to question this decision or that decision or, you know, whatever discussion I'm having. There are two things for Woodland Pond that I am going to work to protect at all costs. Number one is our 501c3 status, and number two is our reputation. And I don't know if you are all aware of this or not. I don't know how much you're on social media, if you're on the New Paltz moderated Facebook page. Woodland Pond has been accused of harboring Zionists within the last month.
Harboring what?
Zionists. On the New Paltz Facebook page. These are reputational things that, whether we're doing that or not, this is not things that we want. We don't want our name attached with anything controversial, right? So I think it's important for us to be able to say, we have a policy on this, here's how it's done, everyone is looked at objectively, the same set of rules apply to everything, it's not what Michelle feels like approving today or tomorrow. So I think we can pare this down significantly. But I do think it's important that there is something, there's some mechanism that is not driven by management that puts this in the hands of the residents, but also does the two things I protect our reputation, protect our 501c3.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna draw this to a close for the purposes of what I wanted to do was to get feedback from the council, old and new. I will ask that you turn in your comments or your notes. Sorry if I miscommunicated, but you all have written them out, that's good. We'll turn them in, we'll compile them together and put them together. I will do this, I will put out the draft that I'm calling it version 1105 of the procedure or guideline for the residents to take a look at. If you would like to comment on it after you've read it, please return your comments in writing with your name, either to the new email address we have, I think, or to the Cubby. And we will include those in the, say, generation of a new guideline draft that will be hopefully by 2 weeks, we'll be able to review it again. That's my goal. I'd like to get this thing into a position that as we go into the first of the year, there's some clear understanding between us as residents and management and legal, what we should be looking at, okay?
Would you also include all these comments so people can read? Okay, so that, okay.
It'll be a Bible, but
Yeah.
it's all right.
No, I just wasn't clear.
No,
Okay, that's
no,
fine.
I think everything that this is all public information.
Correct. Is there any possibility to have legal to talk to us and give us examples of what they mean by things that are not right?
So what I would do in that regard is if you provide me with the questions, what I'll do is, because I want all this correspondence I want in writing, so it's not phone calls. If you provide me the questions for legal, I will forward them to our legal counsel and copy Tom Gilder as the president or chair of the residence council, and then her responses will come back to both of us, and that will be on behalf of the council. So whatever questions you have for legal, we will pay the bills and you know, I mean, we're trying to do this in as, you know, transparent as manner as possible, and this is why we already indicated that we will budget for allowing for this committee to be able to go to legal counsel with questions, those kinds of things. So this is a first step in that direction. So if there are questions that need to be asked now, let me know, and I will copy Tom Gilder on that correspondence.
Yes, if you can get them in and be sure you keep us in the loop. So we know that it's gone and we can keep it in the list
Right,
of
because
things.
one of the things that I've told, again, several people that have come to me, is I can look at Google and interpret something some way, you can look at Google and interpret something another way, but I'm not an attorney, and most of our residents are not an attorney, so we're not gonna deal in suppositions here. You know, I think it should just be legally based, and we have legal counsel that we trust for all different kinds of things, and I'm happy to pay the bills to get those questions answered.
Okay, thank you. Normally I would open it up to council questions, but there were a couple points that we wanted to make today. One was the on aggressive behavior. The council you had asked the council to come up with a input on ideas on how to address them. You've reviewed it and your position.
Is that, you know, so our process is that if we have one bad actor, we always talk to that person directly. That's the first step. If we start to see a trend in something or a concerning issue, then what I will do is come to the council before I make a generalized announcement going forward. And, you know, yesterday I thought everybody was great. I was expecting this place to be in chaos yesterday. Generally, everybody was very good. I do understand that there were some issues at Matt's first fitness class that he quickly reined in. So we never got to a point where I needed to come, for example, to the council and say, we've got a big issue here. But that's what I think will probably work best, if you all agree with that.
I think so. Any input from the council? We had talked about this and had sent a note, so, okay, thank you. We'll go with that.
Okay.
The other thing is you wanted to talk about the upcoming for the expansion program.
Yeah, so we are at a point now that we are ready to do an update on the finances related to the project. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna be scheduling a meeting in December in person to go through some of the salient points of the updated finances for the project. So costs, how it's going, you know, some of the assumptions that went into the modeling, you know, where do we think this is going, how's it gonna all get done? And I've asked the financial advisory committee to assist me in putting together a presentation that will be understandable and comprehensive, but not drowning in details. So the finance advisory committee is gonna work with me on that over the next month. And then we're gonna schedule something for early December to get out to all the residents.
Okay, thank you. Okay, generally, I would open this up, please, any questions?
Michelle, on your last comment, I'm floored that you heard that on social media, we're getting a reputation of harboring Zionists. So I just wanted to make a comment about misinformation. I think we're entering an age where this is going to be more and more. And I think we have to really take it with a grain of salt.
No, I don't disagree with that, but I need us to be aware that that's, you know, I'm not saying that that's the case, but it's kind of one of these things, like some people say that no press is bad press. I don't agree with that statement. I think Woodland Pond's name should not be affiliated with anything that could be considered to be inflammatory. So, I want everyone to just be aware that, you know, I mean, that New Paltz moderated Facebook page is horrible. The people on there are just keyboard warriors and nasty to each other, and it's actually kind of strange. Like it's kind of a strange concept, because I think about New Paltz as being, you know, a very accepting and forgiving town theoretically, but it doesn't always present that way. you know, people want to talk about Woodland Pond, I want it to be that, you know, they're the second largest employer, they've got tons of great residents that are, you know, that they're allowing for, you know, all these topics, you know, and discussion, you know, I mean, we don't. It's just, you know, and I agree with you, I don't know how society reins itself in at this point. You know, it's just, and people, especially behind their keyboards, just think everything is fair game. You know, it's a sad state.
Question. Oh, here, sorry.
What's the name of that group? I wanna get it straight for the minutes.
It's the New Paltz, I don't have the exact name, but it's the New Paltz moderated Facebook page.
You're not fighting the microphones. Apropos this things this afternoon, as a matter of fact, in 3 hours at 2:00, our residents,
All at once.
The meeting is going to be, I will be interviewing 2 people from the current events interest group, and which is very much apropos, and I hope people attend that. By the way, the current event yesterday had a record attendance of about 40-some people, and there were no fighting.
I would like to just give an additional comment concerning the invited speaker committee. I abhor censorship, period. Now, let me project that a bit. We have a speaker who coming here who wants to speak on flower arrangement. That seems rather benign. I mean, how could you politicize flower arrangement unless they want to do it with red flowers and blue flowers? I don't know. So what kind of oversight would something like that require, as opposed to a speaker who wants to speak about the impact of the new Trump administration? We got a big problem in censorship and also decision making, and it's not clear to me whether this is a good thing or a bad thing.
Okay, one last question.
To me, it's very clear. We are more than competent adults who have not given up any rights in terms of thinking or speech when we come here. The point of invited speakers is to enrich our lives and widen our intellectual horizons. Censorship in any form is not acceptable. And certainly censorship on the basis of an assumed negative reaction on the part of some people is not warranted. The only reason to turn down a speaker is if that speaker is advocating for a candidate for electoral office, because that clearly violates 501c3 and jeopardizes our tax exemption. There is no other reason. And if people don't like the topic, they don't come. And if they do come, they can talk about it as we all talk about other conversations and talks that we've had before. There's no other reason.
Fred has a comment.
Okay,
Fred on the. Go ahead, Fred.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Just a couple of things. First, as far as protecting our reputation, yes, it's important to protect our reputation, but we can't be responsible for what some crazy people might say on some Facebook page, and we can't control that. We just can be responsible for what we do here and whatever is true or false. What other people say, there's always going to be some crazy people saying some crazy things that we can't control. The other thing is that you said that I don't have the documents yet, so I look forward to reading these documents, but there was something about the attorneys saying we shouldn't have anything that is upsetting or emotional But how do you define that? And what is, if one person is upset about something, there's, no matter what you say, somebody is going to be upset about it. So how do you define upsetting or emotional, and how, I agree with what other people have been saying, that we should just, the only things that we should not be able to include are people that might contradict with the 501c3 status, basically. Thank you.
Well, I totally appreciate that, but I completely disagree because hate speech is not welcome here either. And no one has said anything about that. And that is a reputational risk. If this community thinks that the only thing that should be restricted is something that's gonna impact the 501c3, that concerns me a great deal. Hate speech is not welcome here. And that's not anything to do with 501c3 status.
But hate speech is a category that's something, anything upsetting and emotional is, I think, way too broad a description of what to avoid. Maybe narrow it down to hate speech or something more specific.
And I think that's a good follow-up question for legal counsel, which we are going to certainly follow up on. So I would suggest that anybody that has questions for legal, again, send them to the residence council email address or put them in, and then we're gonna follow up with them on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can discuss it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Any other,
No, I think we're good,
thank you.
and I'm late for meetings.
I know you told me, try to
Oh,
keep
it's
it.
good, it's good.
All right,
I look
thank you.
forward to the continued discussion on this.
Yes, yes, we will be back at you.
Thank you.
Okay, I need a hard stop at about 20 of 12. I'm gonna make a doctor's appointment, so let's go to committee reports.
Benefit fund. Gotta find it. Benefit fund, the next meeting will be November 20th at 10 a.m. in the conference room. The Health Center Committee, the chair, Margaret, encouraged the committee members to review Dave Roberts' explanation of the proposed changes in the health center on YouTube. It was very clear and informative. The next health center tour will be on Monday, November 18th at 1 p.m. It will start in the Independent Living Library lobby. The tabling event was for the neighbor core for October 1, 2, 3, and 4 at 4:30 to 6:30 outside of the hostess area went very well. They actually got 20 people to sign up, and now they're in the process of getting them trained, hopefully, that they will be part of the new neighbor corps that's in the health center. The board of elections, we're up there on October 28th at 1:30 to assist with voting. And that they weren't helping them vote, they were helping them fill out the forms. The next meeting of the Health Center Committee will be on Tuesday, November 26th at 2 p.m. in the classroom. Questions from the council?
Okay, the Financial Review Committee had a meeting on Monday the 4th. Flash report was reviewed by Christie. We're positive the budget within 150 days. This is important because in September is when we pay all of our pilot and fees to the bondholders and the interest and principal that's earned. And so that's a good sign that we still have good reserves on hand. The also, as you heard, partly heard, at the council association meeting, the 2025 monthly service fee increase will be 5% for all residents. both primary and secondary. The discussion was the real driver of cost is the need for labor. The renovation project, Michelle mentioned that she wants to update the residents on more detail of it. But right now, the big push is they have a planning board presentation, formal public presentation on the 19th. And they will be presenting all of the aspects of the renovation part, which is phases 1 through 4, which includes the health center and the new back. Right now, the revised financial estimate for that is 23 million. And that will just cover the first part. The total entire campus renovation, this is not the new cottages or apartments, is projected at $40 million. The other factor at the meeting was the committee elected Fred Lewinsky as chair and Joan Hollister as vice chair. I have later on in new business request to accept those positions by the council. So if I make a motion to accept Fred Lewinsky and Joan. Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
8-0, thank you. Okay, here's my report. Okay, land conservation day.
The Land Conservation met last month. That was a fairly brief meeting, not much on the agenda. We do have a speaker lined up for next week. It's a day in the life of a Mohawk Ranger. I think as we all live near Mohawk and have had some experiences there, we'll find that interesting. Larry and I are gonna make a field trip tomorrow to try to round up somebody for our January speaker. We hope to be successful. In addition, we had the oral walk to the platform, which was not very well attended, but not unexpectedly so. So we will, I think, as a committee, look at that when we meet next week. We think that because the trail is so much more accessible now, people are going on their own, and hooray for that. We like that. Questions on land conservation? Rove didn't meet last month. We're gonna meet Monday, and it's gonna be an important meeting because we'll get some final numbers. Bob Sorcy expects that we will probably be about 10% ahead of last year in collections, which will of course dollar for dollar be given to the employees. We don't know how the math is gonna work because we don't know how many hours, how many eligible employees have worked, but this is me speaking, not the committee. If we can hit $1 an hour like we did a year ago, I think that'd be good, but Bob's expecting about 10% more in money. So thank you all for your contributions, and I'll have more on that next time. That money will be distributed. It'll be based on hours worked through last Friday, and it will be distributed on their payday of the 24th. So they'll have that money for any holiday needs they want. Road questions? Okay, board. Very interesting meeting last time. I submitted a report as I usually do. And because there was one new board member, the chair, Chris, is that his name? Chris, suggested that I spend some time, this was a Zoom meeting, that I spend some time talking about how the elections run, how the council runs. And I thought that was a great opportunity to share with them, you know, how we come up with candidates, the election process, the committee assignments, and how the committees work and relate to the council. And I think I had a pretty good interest from among them with some questions and feedback. So going forward, starting with this month, what I intend to do is write a small report, but also feature one particular topic. And I thought this month I would choose Rove, since I think that's something they might be interested in, how the residents feel about the employees here and how this is one way to show it. So I'll, of course, give a draft to you before I do it. It's due next week. I'll be away for the meeting. It's a Zoom meeting, and if you want somebody else to attend the meeting, I can give you the connection. If you just want me to do a report, we can talk about that. But I thought I would focus on one item, and I ran that by Lindsay this morning, and she seemed to think that was a good idea. Lindsay is a liaison with the Board for Management. So whoever does this next year, there's maybe something to keep in mind that take some small items and put them in the report, but highlight one thing and give some detail about that. Questions on the course? Okay, thank you.
The Welcome Committee, the new resident social orientation group the committee met on October 25th in the classroom. As is usual, important information was explained and questions answered. A time for socialization and refreshments followed. Library, our meeting was held on November 4th and chaired by Virginia Cannon. Book count for the month of October was 224. Late notices were sent out. Displays for the front table and book review selections were established. Weeding, not wedding, but weeding. Continued. We agreed to give up our storage cage since it was deemed unnecessary at present. Al Chazen's paintings will be given to Design and Decor. Magazines and newspapers will be monitored by Alice Cross. The exception being the Poughkeepsie Journal, which is overseen by a resident and recycled. Vera Elliott will monitor the number of books donated. Ann Gordon will keep track of books deleted. Larry Randall has kept a record of book circulation for the past 6 years. Book circulation has remained very consistent over that period. For the first 10 months of this year, we are running close to 2,955, which is slightly higher than the previous average of other years. Virginia Cannon announced that Michelle has agreed with our request to remove the library doors. The removal will facilitate easier access to certain sections.
Any questions? Larry?
Can I just expand briefly? Thank you, Alice.
Sure.
I was not here this entire time, that is to say, back from day one of this place. But I have the circulation records going back that far. I keep it on an Excel spreadsheet, and as appropriate, I create graphs and such and such from time to time. So just a little volunteer activity on my part.
Thank you.
We call Larry our numbers guy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not a numbers runner.
The dining committee met on Tuesday, November the 5th. The coffee machine was much praised. People seem to like the return of the 24/7 coffee. It was announced that the executive chef position has been filled by a guy called Sam Pride, and he will start on November the 19th. And that means that they are fully staffed in the kitchen. They are short at the moment 2 part-time wait staff, but otherwise they're full. The new menu cycle went into effect on Saturday, the 1st. It was asked of them if they could give copies of the whole 5-week cycle. And it was explained that they're still tweaking it, but at the end of this first 5 weeks, we may be able to obtain copies of like the 5 weeks at a glance, which will give us some idea of what the new dishes are. The other thing that was announced was that there are now 2 menus, and one of the menus is items that are always available, and that menu will ultimately be housed in some sort of a plastic cover, and I think there will be just one on each table. But the daily menus, which change every day, will still be available at every seat at the table. People did not like the idea of having just one menu on the table. So that will be happening. They say that with the always available menu, the options will increase. I didn't think it looked like that, but they said that there was an increased number of entrees available. Depends how they define it. The question was raised again about the salt content. They assured us that all the bases they use are low sodium. one thing that might change, Phil, the new director of dining, is considering the possibility of changing the reservation system, which he thinks would help the flow. He noted that the 6:15 people sometimes had to wait quite a long time because there was a backup from the group that came in at 5:30. So he's considering the possibility of people being able to make reservations at 15-minute intervals. So you would reserve for 4:45, 5 o'clock, 5:15, et cetera. And there would be a maximum of 12 persons allowed in at that time. And he felt that that would prevent some of the slowdown and the backup, because there were a couple of complaints about long waits. Question arose again about the brunch buffet. It was told that the residents did not like that and they would not come back. And also the, what was the other thing that the people didn't like? I can't remember. Oh, the $300 thing. One of the newer residents said it wasn't enough and $10 a day wasn't enough. And that led to that whole discussion. We've had this a million times. And the $300 taken off your payment will remain the same. It will not change. During the week in the pub, there's going to be a new routine. Mondays will be pastrami sandwiches, Tuesday Taco Tuesday, Wednesday wings, Thursday chilies of all sorts, and Friday dogs and sausages and things on buns, all sorts. Okay, oh, sustain, yes. Any questions? Okay, and then sustainability, there was not a meeting since the last meeting. The next meeting will be on the 20th of this month at 3 o'clock in the PAC. And the focus will be on celebrating the holidays in a sustainable way. And there may be some actual practical stuff. We may be making wrapping paper possibly out of newspapers. We may be making decorative chains out of newspaper. Come and see and make things for yourself.
Okay, thank you. Yakov?
The physical plan committee met yesterday. I'm just going to go some only a few highlights. Lightning arresters, which have been apparently not working properly, are being replaced. The cost to Woodland Pond is about $26,000. It was recommended inspection every 5 years. They are not quite required, the 5 years inspections, but that's what it's planned. Smoke alarms on the new cottages apparently are not well connected to the SARA system, and they maybe have to replace either parts of that or the whole system. I'm not sure yet what the recommendation will be. There was a discussion about the storage cases. The reason is that management will need the storage space in the south wing, which is the smaller one, for a switch place for different activities during the construction and remodeling and so on, which probably will be on and off periods over a period of perhaps about 2 years. So people have been asked people that have storage spaces have been asked to reply to a survey so they can make a decision how to handle it. There is surveys at the concierge. I think there is about maybe 15 or 20% of people didn't respond. There are several choices, what they prefer, whether to give up their storage space altogether or up to keeping it the way it is and so on. The north storage space, it was discussed whether that can be used during the transition, but that's not an option because that's part of the health center, and any occupation of that space will require, licensing or approvals from the state. During the remodeling of the kitchen, the walk-in cooler and freezer It's a huge unit, will be replaced. The process may take up to about 4 weeks. In the meantime, and during those weeks, there will have to be an alternative place, probably somewhere outside. We discussed some of the different options. Probably it's going to be a trailer in the outside for that period of time. And last one. In the attics, in the independent living wings, in the attic space, these are spaces that are not utilized. Nobody's using them for anything, but there is no requirement to put sprinklers there. However, insurance companies will increase the payment that we'll have to pay for insurance if there are no sprinklers there. So there was a discussion about that, and we'll have to go with it because otherwise we will incur a tremendous cost. So there was a big discussion basically because it doesn't seem that it's going to be of any practical benefit other than to save money on insurance. So we may have to do that. The twice a month meeting was discussed, and we will going back to the single meeting a month unless there is an emergency reason to do a second one.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Yes.
Point of clarification. I had always assumed that the storage area that one had was based upon where you lived. I've recently been told that's not the case. And for example, when we moved first here, we were in the north wing and our storage was in the north storage. But apparently you can be, regardless of if you live in south, central or north, you might be assigned a storage area in north or in south. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know for fact, but I think.
I think some people have been confused, some people who've been asked to move or whatever, move their storage or remove it, they've been confused about that status. So one final thing, if anybody's interested, I have a photograph which I took, which I'm sure was a no on my part. Took this number of years ago when I found an attic door open on one, I won't say where or when, and I went in and I have a photograph that shows you the forest of 2x4s up there.
Yeah.
That is why you probably, those of you particularly who live in independent living would want a sprinkler system up there. Because if a fire ever started up there, God help us.
The answer to that was that there are sprinklers in all apartments. If the fire were to start, it would start in an apartment, really, not on the attic space. I mean, there is no reason for a fire to start in the attic.
I just want to remind all the committee representatives that unless I have a written report and typed or email, the report's not going in the minutes. I'm not the permanent secretary.
Okay, no, I think we've covered. Okay, Dave.
Yeah, apologies to all. I have two minor items to add to my board discussion. One is, you mentioned annual reports. When may I tell them they should expect their annual report from us? In December?
No. In November.
Okay,
Reports are due to me by the 15th.
okay, I'll tell
I'll
them.
get them next week.
Okay, thanks. The second is, in the discussion with the board last time, Chris reminded me that this council has a specific duty to the board, and that is upon request to provide them with nominations for board positions for our departing members. And I said we'd be ready to do that when they notified us that they wanted it. So it's still pending.
For the minutes for this meeting, if I don't have a written report, it's not going in. For this meeting.
Yaakov, why can't those attic spaces be used for storage?
Cannot be.
Can the attic spaces be used for storage? They need storage space. Oh, is it? I don't know.
It would be nice, but it's code. Okay, we've done the topic, council topics review, I'll update that. Okay, I'm pushing along because I've gotta go. New business, I put on their council email last time we had Michelle, she asked the question, why don't we have an email account? I worked with Terrell and we will have an email account. It's not going to be through the Woodland Pond domain because of security reasons. They cannot open it up to residents or the public. So right now, I was hoping to get a response, but by the next meeting, we will have an up and running email account. So if you want your information shared with the committee, council, go ahead and put it in as an email. So that's up and coming. Okay, Yaakov, you already advertised November 7th?
Yes,
Today?
that's today.
Right, okay. Real quick, ear session. Betsy?
Everybody needs to everybody needs to turn in a survey about what they want done with their cage. Everybody.
Storage, yes.
Everybody.
Okay, good point. Anything else? Thank you. Seeing none, I would like to take a motion to adjourn. Dave's got it up, Alice is right behind it, everybody, yay? All right, see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you. All right, everybody with your notes, please give them to everyone.
I mean, I'm not.
There have been a number of and it was soft. No, it's not. I can't believe I'm saying this. Well, will not. She wants to be.